Hey, welcome to a special season finale episode of Crippled by Culture, where we talk about everything in life and relate it to the disability and chronically ill community. My name is Sean Gold, and I'm an author, advocate, and nonverbal public speaker for the disability community. To provide a quick visual description for accessibility, I am a Black man with a tracheostomy breathing tube in my neck. I am wearing a blue shirt. The person off camera is who you hear speaking for me. This video is of a Zoom call with me and the other person talking for me off camera, and my guest is in the other box next to mine. Today, I would like to thank Adam Ross for being my voice in this episode. In this episode, we're going to be talking about the intersections of disability in fashion and Hollywood.
Before we get any further into the interview, I want to give a shout out to our partnering nonprofit festival for the series, Festability. As a board member, I helped put together a wonderful event in St. Louis at the Missouri History Museum. We will have so many activities and vendors set up all over with an amazing headliner for our main stage. This year, I will be opening for Tony Award-winning actress Ali Stroker. Festability is the best event in St. Louis to celebrate your disability unapologetically. Make sure you come out later this year on October 7, 2023 from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. Thank you Festability for sponsoring the series. Now, back to the show.
Now, let's get to today's amazing guest and see if I can keep my cool, even though I'm thrilled about this episode, because this is actually the very first widely known celebrity interview for this series, and someone I look up to very much. Jeannie Mai Jenkins is an Asian American television host and stylist, best known for her work on the makeover show, How Do I Look? And an Emmy Award-winning host from my favorite former daytime talk show, The Real. As a fashion expert, she is frequently featured on television programs such as Today, Extra TV, Entertainment Tonight, and Insider. She has also appeared as a host for E!, as well as a red carpet host for the American Music Awards, and as a correspondent for the Miss Universe pageant. She is currently a sideline reporter on Holy Moly on ABC, a host on America's Test Kitchen, The Next Generation, and she has a YouTube show called Hello Hane, which I am a VIP member of. Jeannie, thank you for being here today. Shout out to your YouTube producer, Paul, and your team for helping me make this happen. Can't believe it, so excited. How are you doing? And would you mind giving a visual description of yourself, please?
Yes, this visual description over here, get ready for it.
Yes.
Stop in. No, I think the best way to describe what I look like right now is I'm smiling from ear to ear, just a million-watt smile, because I am so honored to be in your presence today, Sean. I am familiar with, first of all, your drive, because you've hit up my team and Paul so hardcore that I was like, wait, I don't meet many people with this type of tenacity. And even though I do travel a lot and, you know, I busy just like many other people, I was like, I have to meet with this young man because there's something about his like urgency that I was like, what is up with him? What's going on, you know? And I'm just really, really moved by you wanting to just take some time to sit with me. You know, I don't get to, honestly, I don't know anybody like you, Sean, and I'm really eager to learn more about you just as much as you are to learn about me.
I so appreciate that. So excited for this conversation that we're going to have. And first, do you identify with having a disability or chronic illness?
I don't, as far as, I mean, sometimes I feel like there's things where I'm like, maybe I should go get checked out, but no, there's nothing that I actually have ever been diagnosed with except for ADHD. And I don't even know what category that falls in. It's just something that when I was diagnosed with it later on in my life, it just means today I have to be very mindful about my reactions to things and the way that I think. because my brain processes things differently instead of looking at it like I'm missing something or that I'm short of something. And so now that I've studied more about ADHD, I've studied more about the spectrum of it, how it affects women who are going through postpartum after I've had my baby, or women in busy careers like myself. I'm able to operate in a manner that I feel more proud of. And so things have been really good since I've understood more about my condition.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. And technically ADHD is considered a disability. Of
Oh, really?
course, yeah, well, how you identify, of course, is personal to you. But yeah, ADHD is considered a disability, as far as the ADA is concerned, anyway.
Wait, you're saying then that like I'm in the club?
Yeah, totally. I mean, if you want to be, I mean, you totally can be
Oh,
like you.
I think I think I think it's because I just look at you as so cool right now, Sean. I'm like, wait, I'm allowed to sit at your table. I think that's so rad. They're teaching me that. I never knew.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I just love that you're open to this conversation. So thank you for answering that. And um, would you say that you're involved or connected with the disabled community in your personal and or your professional life?
I think that I need to be more so. I only have the only proximity I have to somebody who I can immediately think of is disabled is my cousin is autistic and my aunt is wheelchair bound. Um and so those are the two I think of immediately. I have another I'm sorry, I have another aunt who has MS. So I actually
Yeah,
so multiple sclerosis, wheelchair bound, and autism. Um so in that, I only know their journeys and where I get to educate myself more about it is when I join organizations that help me meet other people of the same conditions. So I still don't think that that's enough to cover every single person that has every condition because, not one person is a monolith. Everybody has their own different journeys and stories. So I could always do more.
you, I love that. Yes, and you're totally right. There's an infinite ways to be disabled. And yeah, so yeah, absolutely. And
Question.
I saw that you just posted about the MS.
I did. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Something that right now I've joined forces with a company called EMS because we are of the same like-mindedness of how can we talk more about MS? How can we get out there more about MS? How can we welcome people more to our table to understand what MS is, how many people are affected by it, the gamut of what the symptoms and signs are if you have MS, diagnosed or undiagnosed, because my own aunt had a very tumultuous journey up until discovery or up until diagnosis that she had MS. And I don't want people to have to go through that long, arduous journey like my aunt did. And that's why I joined this because living with someone with MS is just as important as having MS yourself. We all should be educated the same. So joining organizations like that, sitting here and talking with you, Sean, like really helps me to just open my mind more and learn or unlearn the things that I know. I was
Yeah.
also question, Sean, just so I'm in the know. Can you tell me like what is the definition of a disability? Somebody who lives with a disability.
Yeah, totally. Give me just a moment here.
Okay.
Okay, and so your question was, what is the like technical definition of disability?
Correct.
And so the ADA defines, the ADA is the Americans with Disabilities Act, and it defines a person with a disability as a person who has a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities. So that could include people who have a record of such impairment, even if they do not currently have a disability. It also includes people who do not have a disability, but are regarded as having a disability. And the ADA also makes it unlawful to discriminate against a person based on that person's association with a person with a disability. So that's why the ADA is so important too.
That is deep. Wow.
Yeah.
I think I can definitely say I didn't know truly what disability meant.
Yeah, it's a word that a lot of people may not know like this definition of. Yeah.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you for explaining that.
Absolutely, yeah. So you did an episode about your ADHD. What encouraged you to talk about it?
I did an episode on my YouTube series, Hello Hane, because I have this incredible community like you, Sean, where I feel really safe to talk about things. And I know this because I've had prior conversations that were just as difficult or revealing, some of which included some sexual abuse that happened to me growing up, disconnects with my mom around that subject matter when I was a kid, confronting my mom about ways that we clashed today, difficulties of being Asian American in a country that I feel sees us differently, like just lots of different things that I've been really transparent about. And I have this community that comes right out of the gates telling me exactly what they've been through that feels similar along with me, or what they've done to help themselves, or advice, or even just giving me a comforting hug where I need it. So when I found out I was diagnosed with ADHD, it happened after I think I was in denial of it for a while. So I was diagnosed maybe about 7 years ago by Dr. Amen here I think it's in Orange County. He did a CAT scan on my brain, and I came there because I was really, really frustrated with how much I was forgetting things and how upsetting I was to people who work around me, because they were like, we asked you to be on time here. We asked you to do these things. Why couldn't you follow through? Or sometimes just in meetings or board meetings or phone calls, I would drop off and I wouldn't be able to retain information. And I literally thought something was going wrong. I was like, maybe it's early dementia. I don't know what it is. So I went to Dr. Amen, did the CAT scan, and learned that I had ADHD. Now, at the time, I did not understand what that meant, and I was scared of the term. And so I took the paperwork. I came home with a binder, some vitamins, a whole bunch of few steps, a follow-up appointment, and I stuffed it under my bed, and I was like, I don't even want to look at this. Fast forward, I went through divorce, then later on dating, and remarried happily, and came to the biggest full circle of my life, which is I actually want to have a baby. I actually want to live and kind of relive my years when I was a kid, because I didn't love my years, and maybe I can provide a healthier, life for my kid. But then that meant more responsibilities, more things to remember, less hours of sleep. And I went downhill right after I had Monaco, my baby. And so there I learned that I had postpartum anxiety, which is something I never even heard of before. I've heard of postpartum depression, but I didn't know postpartum anxiety. And then I also remembered all the things that I had problems with years ago when I went to go check on, amplified like 10 times harder. I couldn't even remember what I did that morning. I couldn't finish sentences. And so I got it checked out again and learned that there are certain times where after having a baby, you pretty much can reinvent yourself into a whole new person. And sometimes there's things that come with you and some things don't. So for me, the ADHD came, and it came full-fledged, harder than ever. So I had to really own it that I had ADHD, and I had to take medication. And I'm still on it now. And that's where I was like, all right, I got to talk to somebody, because I can't do this by myself. This is lonely and this is scary. So I came on my channel and I said, yo, I got this thing called ADHD. And as the most I knew about it was what all of my friends say when they forget something. When all of my friends can't focus, they go, sorry, I have ADHD. And I'm like, it can't be that simple for me, because it's not just, it's affecting my whole life, my mood, my tears, everything. So speaking about it on Hello Hane, really, really helped me because my community came like pulled up and like helped me understand, told me their own situations, gave me some even ideas on how to live life differently at home. So I've been so thankful since.
That's beautiful. I
Thank
love
you.
that. And what would you say that you have learned from your experience connecting with your community about your ADHD, either about ADHD or disability in general? What stays with you from that experience?
The one thing I learned the most is that you can never judge what it's like to be in someone else's shoes,
Hmm.
ever. I live in a city where you have some of the most beautiful people, some of the smartest inventors, most famous, talented people come to the city to make a living and make a name for themselves. But that doesn't mean anything. At the end of the day, anything could affect somebody's perspective, the way they think, the way they speak, the way they look at things, the way they need to be loved. Everybody's different. And I feel like sometimes in our world we want to ask like, where are you from? Because maybe that'll help give us an idea of what that means to be from Alabama or what it means to be from the Bay. But that doesn't give you anything. It does it everybody's still different. Or somebody could say, oh, I've been divorced. Well, okay, you might have an idea of what that means, but it affects everybody differently. Even just saying I have ADHD, I learned from my followers and my fans that means something different to everybody. And the number one thing that we could do more of as a society is just have more understanding for people and have more patience for one another.
100%. Yes, totally agree. And I really appreciate your transparency on your channel, especially on YouTube, which when I saw that video, I immediately noticed a lot of internalized ableism, which is similar to internalized racism. How has that journey been?
You got to teach me something, Sean. What does internalized ableism mean?
Yes. Yes. That's actually a really good question. Um, yeah, so it's basically hating or being ashamed of your own disability.
I'm an internalized ableist for sure. That's me. I still hate it. I don't, it frustrates me. And I
Yeah,
know as a grown woman that hating anything about myself is not going to help me get to the better version of myself and that it's not the right thing to do, but I'm just going to keep it real. Like, I don't like being so forgetful. I don't like being only capable of thinking about a few things at a time. I don't like that I'm super irritable and snappy at my husband or my family members if they don't get what I'm trying to convey. But I do know that I got here having this, which is
yeah,
something I'm proud of. I also know that I have the most amazing community and friends and family if I just let them in my world to know what it feels like to be me. And I do know that I am capable of learning how to adjust things around me a little bit just so I can succeed in my own pace. So I'm learning how to not be an internal ableist.
yeah. And I love how transparent you are and vulnerable because that's very valid and um, very common. I don't think that it's possible to grow up in the society as a disabled person without encountering internalized ableism somewhere along the journey. And it can definitely be, for a lot of people, it's a lifelong thing of sort of like unlearning that, and accepting all parts of ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Yeah, you know? And yeah, it's totally not your fault. Like it's not, yeah. But I just love that that is something that you want to work through.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would love to see like a mini series of you further working through that on YouTube if you are comfortable with that. That'd be amazing.
I would. If I do, I would want to make sure that it's super honest and educational. Like I would want to have some experts. I would want to have different, people on the spectrum of ADHD to really, come representing. So that's an idea, Sean. I'll tap into you if I decide to move forward with that.
Yeah, I love that. And so now your involvement in Hollywood. How long have you been in the entertainment business?
I have been in the business for at least 19 years. I'm going to say 20 because I moved to LA when I was 24 and now I'm 44. So I'm going to say 24 years, 20 years in the business.
Wow, yeah, amazing. And what has been your favorite projects that you got to do throughout the years thus far?
My favorite, my first show, How Do I Look, was just really the core of my heart. I really love celebrating women and people, specifically women, because for me, I grew up in a household with many aunts and uncles aunts and mom and my grandmother, who all were very defiant in their own way. And I always just like, the only way I can describe what kind of pressure it was to be a strong woman in my house is that every woman in my house escaped communism to get here. Like literally gave up everything they had, gave up their house, their closet, their kitchen that they knew, their cows, their farm, stuffed a couple of pieces of gold in their shoe and got on a little dinky boat that fit 8 people with 14 heads and took out to sea to try to head to another country for a better life. And that right there, like there's nothing I could come home complaining about. There's nothing. There's like, if I'm like, oh, I had a bad day today, somebody was mean to me. My mom's like, okay, did you leave your country? Do you fight for freedom? And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
I'm just having a bad day. And so like those type of things to me, like I really, really love women. So my first show, How Do I Look? I would say being around women, celebrating them, getting them to learn how to look their best. That was amazing. The Reel is also like a baby. I mean, I grew up on The Reel. I really like went through some of the biggest life transformations. And some of the hardest parts of my life was through The Reel. So that's always going to be, I mean, a memory that I just can't top. Dancing with the Stars was incredible. I loved Dancing with the Stars because I've never been challenged like that. I don't like to like be judged for my dancing, like try me never. But I was, in the biggest competition, and between you and I feel like I could have gotten even farther. I could have given Nelly a run for his money, but we're gonna let that live. So it was like I feel like those 3 are like big time moments that I really loved. And then I also did things like I met Miss Michelle Obama, forever First Lady. She's so dope. Meeting her was incredible. If I didn't have this career, I would not have met my husband. So I would say my favorite episode was meeting my husband because that changed our lives on The Reel. There's a lot. Like, I don't think the show's long enough for me to list all the things that have happened for me because of this career.
Yeah, honestly, yeah. I mean, you've done so many amazing things. You've been a part of so many different things in your career, and it's just exciting to see you continue. Yeah. And so, okay, so before we continue, how is Monaco? I can't believe she's already a year old. I love all the videos you post.
She's so cute, right?
Adorable.
No, you okay. So I'm gonna post these new videos coming up, but like she does this thing now. Like in my house, we all teach each other to sneeze like this because it's nasty out in these streets. So we just need to like contain it. So you'll see a video where my brother's going, and she's now with her onesie, like trying to like
Oh,
up from all different parts. It's so cute. She's so funny. She's just like my daughter. If you see her Instagram is Monaco Mai Jenkins, and she is very much in her own world, her own personality. She does not follow you. If you try to like go, get her to follow you to go to another room. She does not follow you. She does not chase you for kisses. She's over here doing her own thing. She doesn't fight me to go to bed. She's like, good night. I'm done with y'all. Bye. She's very, very, very defiant and she's kind of like an old lady.
I love that. And so, okay, so getting back to the Hollywood stuff and your career, have you worked alongside any disabled people on projects that you know of? I saw that you're spreading awareness about MS, yes, and you mentioned that before about the organization that you're partnering with too.
Yep. So working alongside many people in the community with MS, with EMS, this company was a huge, huge eye-opening experience. I was able to interview athletes and nurses, caregivers, incredible people who taught me what it is like to live with MS or to be associated with somebody living with MS. That is where there's something that's so freeing when you can just kind of start off the entire purpose of being together is owning something like having a disability, having MS. That just like, there's just a bond. There's an immediate bond that happens there. I also can say that my projects on in stopping traffic, I was the executive producer of 2 documentaries, one called Stopping Traffic, Sean, you look like you know, and one's called Survivors of Sex Trafficking. And in these documentaries, I spoke with women who had survived some of the most heinous acts of humanity against them, from being sold and shipped like cargo to different countries, to being sexually abused from young ages, to having to sell their body like they were just common goods, to just being chained up and treated like animals. So a lot of these women today, they have very heavy PTSD, besides being either disfigured or emotionally damaged to a degree that, you have to start back almost at baby steps to kind of be able to say your name and to own who you are and that you've survived. These are immeasurable things that have happened to strong, beautiful women that I don't even know how to categorize, when it comes to disabilities. But that is definitely a time where I felt that the most important thing I could do is to strip everything I know about these incidents that you've heard of and past stories I've heard of, and look at each of these women as their own complete entity and story to understand what they went through, and for each woman the same, because no person can ever come out from such trauma the same way, and each needs to be learned about in their whole entirety, given their fair time, because being themselves. So that I would say was like one of the most eye-opening experiences for me, those 2 years of doing those documentaries.
Yeah, absolutely. And can you just briefly explain for our audience what human sex trafficking is and human trafficking is?
Of course. Human trafficking is the buying, selling, trading, or coercion of the human body, meaning somebody putting you in a situation where you either have to work or sell against your own will. And that could be with your own body. That could mean for labor. That could mean something for basic things that we see everywhere, from housekeeping to landscaping, to being somebody who manufactures clothing in warehouses overseas, here in the US, to being sold as a human slave. It's $150 billion business every year. And it is because, first of all, laws aren't regulated enough and aren't consistent across the world in order to protect humans. Number two, things like the internet, things like COVID, things like the Super Bowl make it really easy for people to be exchanging deals with other people, thinking that they're going to either, fly to Europe because they're going to get a modeling degree and work for the summer. But when they get there and their passport's been exchanged, it's a different story. Or maybe your family's in a bad situation and you need to go ahead and take this job that for just a couple years, even though it's under your pay, you're going to go and work on this person's farm and, exchange your services. But then it turns out that then you're being forced to stay there longer, or your family's going to be put in jeopardy. I mean, the human trafficking can happen in such, it's just too easy. It's too readily available. And today, sadly, because we are in a recession and we do have things like wars happening across the world, these things put people in situations where they're desperate. They'll do anything for money. We also have children on the internet that lack love and lack confidence or lack guardianship. They lack, being able to discern when somebody is being real on the internet. When someone says, "You're beautiful. I want to meet you. I want to be your friend. Let's go play this game. Come meet me over here." Some kids just don't understand, understand that there are predators out there. And so they get put into a situation. Well, then they're then bought or sold or traded, and then they're never able to get out of it. So these two documentaries I did, Stopping Trafficking, Survivors of Sex Trafficking, explain to people what exactly trafficking is, how it can happen in your own neighborhood, how we have to be mindful about the products we buy so that it's ethical. They're not supporting anything that's shady or hurting to other humans. And the more we can talk about it, the more hopefully we'll put an end to human trafficking. But for now, I've been working to fight trafficking for almost 10 years. And when I first started, it was the third largest form of dark crime. Number one and number two being drugs and guns, weapons. And now it's number one. It's the number one form of the most inhumane type of crime imaginable today. And it's thriving. So I appreciate being able to talk about it here because most people don't want to talk about human trafficking. It's that painful to even hear.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, just thank you for, number one, thank you for going into that and sharing that with our audience. This is incredibly important. And, like you said, each individual who experiences this experiences it differently, and they can come out of it differently as well. And so it's so important for us to give them that attention and learn their stories and listen. And so I just love that you are doing the work that you're doing. So thank you for that.
Thank you for asking about it, Sean.
Absolutely. Yeah. And in your time working on this issue, have you come across any data or research about how the disability community has been affected by human trafficking worldwide, or in the US in particular?
That's an interesting question because from what I know, as far as what we've discussed, the definition, the wide range of, being disabled can mean, the one thing I can say that I've heard as far as research is if there is anybody, especially a child at home that is living with a disability, for the most part, I think, generalizations, obviously aren't always right. But in this case, I think it's important to say that anybody with a disability, whether they know it or not, it's important for them to feel like they're understood. It's important for them to feel like they're loved. It's important for everybody to feel like they're loved. But if we're going to talk about disabled people, most of the time, the disabled community is I feel like they're fighting to either educate themselves or the people around them to understand better what their needs are. And so if you have an average household with somebody who is disabled and already is fighting for that space of safety and understanding and empathy and love, if they don't get it, they're going to be more susceptible to be trafficked in some way if they're approached. I'm going to give an example. I know there was one situation where there was a little girl that I met a long time ago. She was Hispanic, and she, at the time she was trafficked, was 9 years old. And she had met her predator online because I think at the time it was like we had AOL chat and things like that. And so she was chatting, and she had dyslexia, but she didn't know it at the time. So at the time when she was in school, she was, struggling with her homework, being berated by her parents because they thought that she wasn't putting effort into it, that she wasn't, trying hard, that she didn't care, that she wasn't appreciating that she was being put into the school. And so she started to withdraw. And the only place that she felt like she was heard and understood about these woes was with this friend on this AOL chat. So she would, speak. Now, this friend was supposed to be a 12-year-old girl, but this friend was actually at the time a 38-year-old male. So he's sitting there chatting with her and telling her everything that she should have been getting at home. I hear you. I feel for you. How was your day today? I wish I could be there to give you a hug. I've had bad days too. I understand what you're feeling. All the things that this young woman really needed. And so when this male who was posing as this friend offered to meet her at a park, he actually showed up with a little girl who happened to be another trafficked young woman, and he pretended to be her dad. And so this young trafficked woman, who was actually 16 but pretending to be 12, they met, they bonded, and he had taught her and groomed her on what to say to this little girl with dyslexia, on how to befriend her, and started to coerce her to meet them at the park. And slowly, as they met at the park, he would then tell her if they wanted to sell things like bracelets. He started to teach the girls, like, hey, if you want to make some money, here's to sell things. And again, trafficking reaches out to women or children or men who are in need of either love, attention, or money, period. That's what they get you for. So in this case, this little girl was getting love. She was getting attention, not only from the little girl that was now her friend, but also her father that was feels like a guardian now. Now he's offering ways for them to make money. And before she knew it, she was selling little like bags of crack with the bracelets, and she was learning how to sell it, knowing what it was, but after a while trusting that these were her friends and she was making money. And again, her parents never even noticed her going to the park on these days, never even noticed her coming home and making money and all of a sudden having $20, $100, at 9, 10, now 11 years old, and went on for a couple of years until eventually she trusted and ran away from her house and joined them to move to another part. I think they moved from California to Santa Fe, New Mexico. And before she knew it, by the time her parents found out and made a report, she was then trafficked and into the system and sold as a slave. So I heard this story from her. Now she's about 20 years old. She was rescued, and she tells this story very vibrantly because she's like, now as an adult, I know exactly what I was missing at home. I know exactly what I needed, and I was getting it from these strangers. And if there's anything I can say from my, being dyslexic, I felt like nobody understood me. I felt like I was a reject, and I hated myself because I was so angry at why I didn't understand things. So anything that felt like that loved me was a friend, was comfort. So I think that's the biggest thing where trafficking and disability can intersect.
Yeah, and that totally makes sense. And I think that many movements and systems that we're trying to dismantle right now, they're at this roadblock because people forget to research these issues from disability lenses. Sex trafficking, I think, is definitely one of them.
Oh, big time. Absolutely. I think it's overlooked in I would say personally that it's overlooked in most cases because it's an afterthought for me. I don't even think about the disabled community. And, if I think about just today, I went to a restaurant to eat. Was on the phone talking about a trip I have planned coming up. I had to go to the gym right after that. I have to go to another restaurant to go help my friend tonight look for a restaurant space to build thing. There's not one part of it that I'm wondering, if I were disabled, how would I maneuver any of those differently? I don't like it. I don't even think about it. And then I don't even think, if there was a friend that I brought that was, let's say, physically disabled, could she do any of those things or get to any of those things the way I did? I don't even know. And so I think it is an afterthought. And I think I'm an average person. If I'm seeing that I could learn more or consider it more, then I think somebody else would feel the same alongside with me.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that lots of people, hopefully watching and listening to this show, will relate to that. And, the questions that you just asked, I think they're super important. And I would be very interested to see what, experts and advocates, people like yourself, do with those questions. And so when you started this journey of learning about human trafficking and working to end it and to to end it and to, of course, support survivors of it, what initially made you want to advocate in the beginning? And mhm.
What initially made me join the fight against trafficking is, well, I didn't know what it was when I first witnessed it. I didn't know what trafficking was. And it was a little over 10 years ago. I went to Vietnam and I was visiting a cousin of mine. This cousin of mine was someone who was very close to our family, really sweet, younger version of me, I felt like. So I would always send her my clothes. I was starting out in my career and I was like sending her my clothes and sending her things to, like, help her feel saucy and cool out there in Vietnam. And at the time we had Facebook, and she would always post pictures of things that she wore that I gave her, and she just looked, phenomenal, and I always cheered her on. But then after a while, after a couple of years, the pictures started looking very different. She was wearing things very stylishly sexy, and she was only 14 at the time. So by the time she turned 16, I mean, she was looking like a grown woman that was not in like professional settings. And I was like, what's going on? This is so weird. So I flew out to Vietnam to visit her, and she didn't really want to talk about where she worked. She definitely had a different demeanor than what I'd seen for, and she just seemed like anxious all the time. And so one night I followed her to work and saw, instead of going where she told me she worked at the salon, she'd made a right and she went upstairs, and it was this disco club with like bright red lights, super super heavy security in the front. But when you got in, which I snuck in, there was lots of girls there from the ages of, like, they looked like 10 to maybe like 30, and they were all dressed very provocatively. And there were rooms that these girls would take men that were standing like on one end looking, and there was like a clipboard with like numbers of these women, and you would pick the number of women that you would want. And I found out that this was a brothel. And I saw my cousin there and found out she was working at this brothel. Well, I confronted her that night and found out that the only reason why she worked at this brothel was because she was paying off a debt that her parents had sold her off to take care of because of a gambling debt that her dad had. And when I heard this, and I was just so shocked and afraid, and I didn't even know people could do this, like sell their family members. This just sounds crazy. But when I brought this story home and I was talking to a colleague of mine, she said, Jeannie, that's human trafficking. That's sex slavery. And I was like, wait, what? The only time I've heard of slavery is obviously what we know in history, and still, having issues with today. But she said, no, this is something that still goes on today. It's a different type of slavery, but it's slavery. And it is a thriving, booming business that involves men, women, children of all race, gender types, backgrounds. And I said, oh my God. And something in me from the little Jeannie that was so loving and trusting at a young age, that it was used against her, it was preyed upon, it was abused, it was sexually abused, it was sexually violated, it was manipulated, and it was coerced. All those triggers inside of me set off. And I said, now that I've seen what I see, I can't unsee it. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life doing everything I can to fight it. And that's what's got me here today.
Yeah. Do you have any other documentaries that you're working on that could be coming out anytime soon about human trafficking?
I don't have any right now, but the last time I talked to the fabulous directors of both these documentaries, Survivors of Sex Trafficking and Stopping Traffic, they told me the ladies are named Sadali and Anabuti. They come from the Sediaton retreat in here in it's actually in Texas. And they told me that they would love to join forces to work on a third documentary that talks a little bit more about what trafficking looks like today, especially since, the last times we heard of modern day slavery taking place in the entertainment industry is people like R. Kelly to Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell. So these are, very public cases that actually, sadly, are the only things that opened up people's eyes to be like, this is still happening today. It's thriving. It's not just happening, it's thriving. So we may join forces to work on something awesome that can help further educate what trafficking is about.
Yeah. Well, we will look forward to that for sure. And if it's not clear to our viewers and listeners already, this is it's a very urgent issue, and it's super important that we learn more about this and listen to survivors and what they need. So thank you, Jenny.
Of course. Thank you, Sean, for asking these real questions.
Yeah. And speaking of productions, can you tell me about the show America's Test Kitchen, The Next Generation?
Yeah, America's Test Kitchen, The Next Gen is my first ever cooking show. Something people don't know about me is I absolutely love food, like next level to loving food. I know people love food and they like want to eat, they look forward to their dinner. No, this is like, I am constantly scouring the cities I'm in for the next newish version of dishes. I collect sauces and recipes from all over the world. I battle people that I have no business battling on being able to make their dishes better. I just am so obsessed with, filling your palate with like the next taste that's going to just, explode and awaken your senses. So when I was offered this cooking show from America's Test Kitchen, I was like, oh my God, this is like my first time that I get to like really be surrounded by the best of the best in the kitchen. So it's on Amazon Freevee. It's actually still streaming now. You can see the whole episode and it's so good. There are so many dynamic personalities on, people that like to be bougie on a budget like I do, people who are only vegetarian, so they only make like the most heartiest of meals out of a bunch of leaves and beans. There's so many cool people that I just met on the show. It was a no-brainer. I had to do it. And I've been cooking more so too in the kitchen. So I'll be sharing some more recipes and hopefully doing more work around food.
Love that. And um, do you remember any of your favorite dishes from the first season?
Yeah. The first thing that I can think of, I talk about this all the time, but it like it changed my life. So there are these smashed potatoes that our guy Robbie makes. Robbie is one of the finalists that I'm not going to well, you'll see it, but I'll just tell you he's a finalist. He's very cute also, so you should definitely check him out. But he made smashed potatoes, um, and he called them mashed potatoes, but they were smashed potatoes, and they were the best potatoes I've ever had in my life. Every single bite was this savory, umami, like tingly, crispy, soft, beautiful, like love, like little love pocket of a potato. And I actually have to check my DMs because I asked him for the recipe and let's see if he gave it to me. But yeah, that's like my number one dish for the whole season.
Love that. That sounds amazing. What an experience.
Thank you.
Yeah. And what kind of chefs would you like to have on next year? Or what interesting food items would you like to try?
I I always want to know how to reinvent chicken. I think like chicken, I only eat like chicken that has like the fat. So I love the dark meat in chicken. But if you can like make some exciting things out of a chicken breast or a turkey breast, come through. Because I think that so, oh my God, I just hate chicken breasts and turkey breasts. So it's terrible. I don't even think it should exist. So there's that. The second thing I would love to see people make are things with bone marrow. I really love the taste of bone marrow. And I also love, obviously, how healthy it is. Like you know, it's one of the most healthiest things that you can make broth out of and sip on.
Mm.
So I'd love to see what people can do with with bone marrow. I saw a pizza place in New York that I'm actually going to try out. I'm going to take my husband to, but they make bone marrow pizza toppings. They like sizzle it on a skillet until it becomes like a little crunchy little fat drizzle. And then I mean, that just sounds good to me. So bone marrow pizza is really cool. I also want to see meals done in 30 minutes. I can't get enough of those. Like I like 30 minutes, make it easy. Like, you know, these cats were like putting corset on a chicken. Ain't nobody got time for that. Like nobody. So that's fun and everything. That's good for you. Do it for your Instagram. Here, I want you to cook things in 30 minutes because I got like that much time to go home and whip something up before my husband gets on Uber Eats. So that's what I want to see of more next season.
Yeah. Ooh, that sounds amazing. Bone marrow pizza.
Yeah.
Yeah. So our last two questions are going to be about um, a couple of your shows.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm very curious, what made you initially decide at the very beginning to audition for The Real?
I heard that it was a talk show that's going to feel like being with your girlfriends. And that's me all day. I have a great, amazing group of friends that are my girls and my gays. And all we do is just talk life, talk money, talk honey, talk drink, talk again. Like we do all the things. And so to hear that there was a show like that, I was like, of course, I'm going to be the show. Are you tripping? Like this is for me. So when I brought my ass up in there, I felt immediately that this was going to be such a fun show. Like it was so good. And I remember Tamara meeting her the first time. I remember Adrian, Lonnie, Tamar. I just remember all of it. And we were so excited. We were so young. And I still today, there is no other show that is like The Real at me.
Period.
Mhm.
Period. Yes, the one and only. Yeah. And so ditto for Hello Honey. I'm
Thank
obviously
you.
glad because now you know I exist. But I love Hello Honey. So what made you want to do that show?
Well, I love Hello Honey because it made me able to have a living diary about what I was going through my head and what I need to learn about with people around me. The schools that I went to in the Bay Area were it was heavily Hispanic, heavily Black, and heavily Asian in those categories, like specifically. It wasn't like it didn't mingle and mix until I got a little bit older. So I never felt like I got a really good whole, like a well-rounded view of like what everybody is, what everybody is thinking and feels like and wants to do. And so my Hello Honey community feels like being able to go to all the parties, go to all the tables, have lunch with everybody out there who thinks and wonders about things like me. And so that's like my favorite thing about Hello Honey is the community, straight up. They're just like, I have smart, caring, thoughtful, funny moms, students, entrepreneurs figuring themselves out. People just like me. And I'm always going to take care of my community because of that.
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful community that you have built.
Thank
Yeah. And so, yeah, thank you again. And was there anything else that you wanted to? Oh,
I
one second.
have one question.
Yeah.
One question I wanted to ask you, Sean, is what is it that the world can all learn or do more to understand the disabled community?
I love that question. So I would encourage people to just listen and actually follow a lot of amazing advocates to learn, like myself, or Upgrade Accessibility, or Imani Barbarin, to name a few. These are all advocates and activists. Advocacy is a job, and we are rarely paid for our labor, but at the bare minimum, listen and learn along. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Thank you, Sean. I take that wholeheartedly, and that's perfect advice for myself too.
I so appreciate you. And yeah, so we will wrap it there. Thank you so much for
You
coming
got
on.
that was a wonderful interview, Sean. You did so great. Thank you for such thoughtful questions. Most interviews are, they're just so boring. They ask things that I'm like, I mean, no shade, but you could get this all on Google, and when you have somebody's presence and time, like get them to like really think. And I loved it. I loved all of your questions. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. You're so dynamic. There's so many things, so many topics that you can talk about, and it's just great to hear you and to get to have this back and forth with you.
Thank
And I know I said wrap, but sorry, that was a flub. I shouldn't have said wrap because we are still recording. I'm just gonna say the outro really quickly, and then we will stop the recording. Okay. It was an honor and a dream come true. I would love to have you back on the show anytime, and would appreciate it if you recommend this to any other celebrities you can think of. And I hope you have enjoyed this as much as I did. And I appreciate the insights that you provided. And if people want to follow you and support the work that you do, where can they do so?
You guys can find me on Instagram at the Jeannie Mai. I will be sharing this interview too, so I can't wait to see what you guys think of it. And you can also find me on TikTok at the Jeannie Mai, and you can find me on YouTube at Hello Honey, my show.
Amazing. And I will definitely make sure to share everything in my description below. Once again, I'm Sean Gold. Thank you all for watching and listening. Make sure you like, comment all your thoughts, and subscribe. Also, make sure the bell is on to be notified of each upload. I'll be back for the next season of Crippled by Culture.
Bye, Sean. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.